When people think of the American Mafia, their minds often drift to the Five Families of New York or the Chicago outfit. They picture backroom deals in Little Italy or the bloody St. Valentine's Day massacre. But the heartland of America had its own dark and violent chapters in the story of organized crime. Ohio, a state known for its industrial might and Midwestern values, was also home to a deeply entrenched and powerful criminal underworld. The story of the Mafia in Ohio is primarily a tale of two cities, Cleveland and Columbus. Each city nurtured its own brand of La Cosa Nostra, with unique histories that were often intertwined through alliances, rivalries, and the shared pursuit of illicit fortunes that stretched from the shores of Lake Erie to the deserts of Las Vegas. The Cleveland crime family, one of the nation's original mafia syndicates, was a force to be reckoned with for much of the 20th century. Its members were not just local thugs, they were players on the national stage, holding seats on the Mafia's ruling commission and influencing everything from labor unions to casino operations. Their story is one of ruthless ambition, explosive violence, and eventual spectacular collapse. The streets of Cleveland's Little Italy and the quiet suburbs of Mayfield were the proving grounds for bosses who would build an empire on bootleg whiskey, gambling rackets, and fear. Their influence was so profound that it shaped the city's very identity for decades, leaving behind a legacy of both terror and a strange, dark glamour. Downstate, the capital city of Columbus hosted a smaller but no less significant criminal organization. The Columbus crime family often operated in the shadow of its more powerful northern counterpart, sometimes acting as a satellite crew for the Cleveland or New York families. Yet, they carved out their own territory and were deeply involved in the lucrative schemes that defined the Mafia's golden era. Their story is more subtle, a narrative of hidden connections that linked a quiet suburban development to the massive skimming operations of Las Vegas casinos. The Columbus family's activities demonstrated the far-reaching tentacles of organized crime, showing how even a seemingly quiet Midwestern city could be a crucial cog in a nationwide criminal machine. This history is not just a collection of old stories about gangsters and G-men. It is a fundamental part of Ohio's social and cultural fabric. The rise and fall of these two families is a dramatic saga that reflects the broader history of the American Mafia itself. It is a journey that begins with Sicilian immigrants seeking power in a new world, peaks during an era of unimaginable wealth and influence, and ultimately crumbles under the weight of internal betrayal and federal prosecution. Understanding the story of the Cleveland and Columbus crime families is essential to understanding the full scope of organized crime in America and the lasting mark it left on the heartland. The seeds of Cleveland's formidable crime family were planted long before Prohibition turned gangsters into millionaires. Around the turn of the 20th century, a wave of Sicilian and Italian immigrants settled in the city, bringing with them Old World traditions and, for a select few, Old World methods of extortion. This was the era of the Black Hand, or La Mano Nera. It was not a single, organized entity, but rather a crude and brutal form of organized crime. Gangs of thugs would send threatening letters to prosperous Italian-American business owners, demanding money under the threat of violence, kidnapping, or even death. The letters were often signed with the ominous symbol of a black handprint, a terrifying calling card that left little room for negotiation. The problem became so widespread that the Cleveland Police Department was forced to create a special Italian squad to deal specifically with these crimes. But the Black Hand rackets were notoriously difficult to combat. Victims were often too terrified to cooperate with the authorities, knowing that snitching would lead to certain and brutal retaliation. This code of silence, or omertà, was a powerful tool that allowed these early gangs to operate with near impunity. They created a shadow government within the immigrant communities, offering a twisted form of protection while instilling a deep-seated fear. It was in this violent crucible that the first stirrings of a more structured criminal organization began to take shape. As these extortion rackets grew, certain figures began to emerge as leaders, consolidating power and territory. In Cleveland, this led to the formation of early gangs like the Mayfield Road Mob around 1913. Centered in the city's Little Italy neighborhood, this group was composed of ambitious young men who saw opportunity in crime. It was a precursor to the more sophisticated family structure that would soon dominate the city's underworld. These early groups were still largely fragmented, but they were learning the business of organized crime, building networks, and establishing the hierarchies that would be essential for the challenges and opportunities that were just around the corner. The true architects of the Cleveland Mafia, however, hailed from Licata, Sicily. Two families, the Leonardos and the Pirellos, immigrated to America and brought their old country rivalries and ambitions with them. Joseph Big Joe Leonardo rose to become the first recognized boss of the Cleveland crime family. He was a shrewd and powerful leader who, along with his brothers, began to unify the city's disparate Italian gangs under a single banner. Joseph Pirello, another Licata native, served as one of his top lieutenants. For a time, they worked together, laying the foundation for a criminal empire, but the dawn of Prohibition would soon turn their alliance into a bloody feud. The passage of the Volstead Act in 1920, ushering in the era of Prohibition, was the single greatest gift the United States government ever gave to organized crime. Suddenly, the production and sale of alcohol became illegal, creating a black market of unimaginable scale and profitability. In Cleveland, the bootlegging trade exploded. By 1923, the city was home to an estimated 10,000 illegal stills and over 3,000 speakeasies, all demanding a constant supply of illicit liquor. The key ingredient for making cheap, potent bootleg whiskey was corn sugar, and control over its supply became the ultimate prize for the city's aspiring crime bosses. This lucrative trade would turn former allies into deadly enemies. Big Joe Leonardo, the established boss, quickly dominated the corn sugar business. His control over this essential commodity made him the undisputed king of Cleveland's underworld. However, his former lieutenant, Joseph Pirello, and his 6 brothers saw the immense profits being made and decided they wanted a larger piece of the action. Around 1926, the Pirello family broke away from the Leonardos, establishing their own corn sugar operation and directly challenging the boss's authority. This act of defiance shattered the fragile peace within Cleveland's Mafia and ignited a brutal and bloody conflict that would later be known as the Corn Sugar War. The struggle for control was waged with guns and knives in the back alleys and barbershops of Cleveland. On October 13, 1927, the war reached its shocking climax. Big Joe Leonardo and his brother John were lured to a Pirello-owned barbershop on Woodland Avenue, a place they likely thought was neutral ground. It was a trap. As they sat in the barber chairs, assassins burst in and opened fire, killing both brothers in a hail of bullets. The brazen ambush sent a clear message to the city's underworld. There was a new power in charge. Joseph Pirello had successfully eliminated his rival and seized the throne, becoming the new boss of the Cleveland crime family. Joseph Pirello's reign, however, was destined to be short and chaotic. While he had won the war, he had also created powerful enemies. In December 1928, he hosted a summit of mobsters from across the country at Cleveland's Statler Hotel, an attempt to solidify his power on a national level. But the meeting was a disaster, attracting unwanted police attention. His rivals, particularly the formidable Mayfield Road Mob led by Frank Milano, were waiting for their moment to strike. That moment came in 1930. Pirello was shot and killed at a restaurant owned by Milano's faction. The Pirellos' brief and violent era was over, paving the way for a new, more disciplined leadership to take control. Following the violent upheavals of the Prohibition era, the Cleveland crime family entered a period of unprecedented stability and growth under the leadership of John T. Scalish. Taking the reins in 1944, Scalish began what would become the longest reign of any boss in the family's history, lasting for 32 years. Unlike his predecessors, Scalish was not a man who reveled in open warfare. He was a modern mafia executive who understood that true power lay not in street brawls, but in quiet influence, strategic alliances, and the steady flow of cash. He de-emphasized violence and focused on diversifying the family's rackets, transforming it from a band of bootleggers into a sophisticated and far-reaching criminal enterprise. Under Scalish's astute guidance, the Cleveland family's influence expanded far beyond the borders of Ohio. He looked west to the burgeoning desert oasis of Las Vegas, recognizing it as a golden goose for the mob. The Cleveland family became key investors in the Desert Inn Casino, using their connections to help finance its construction and secure a piece of the action. This was the beginning of the infamous skim, where mob-controlled casinos would underreport their cash earnings, with millions of untaxed dollars secretly funneled back to mafia bosses in Cleveland, Chicago, Kansas City, and Milwaukee. Scalish ensured his family had a major straw in that river of cash, solidifying their wealth and national standing. Another critical pillar of Scalish's empire was his control over the Teamsters Union. The Mafia's grip on the union, particularly its massive Central States pension fund, was legendary. This fund became a private bank for La Cosa Nostra, providing loans for mob-backed projects like the Las Vegas casinos that traditional banks would never touch. The Cleveland family exerted immense control over local chapters and had significant sway at the national level. This influence gave them power over legitimate industries like trucking and construction, allowing them to extort businesses, control labor, and steer lucrative contracts to friendly companies, all while raiding the pension fund for their own illicit purposes. During the 1950s, the Cleveland family reached its zenith, boasting approximately 60 made men and hundreds of associates. Scalish was a respected figure in the national underworld, important enough to attend the infamous Appalachian meeting in 1957, a summit of America's top mafia bosses. For over 3 decades, he ruled with a steady hand, bringing immense prosperity and prestige to his organization. But his long and successful reign contained the seeds of its own destruction. Scalish ruled as an absolute monarch, and when he died unexpectedly during heart surgery in 1976, he had failed to name a clear successor. This created a dangerous power vacuum that would soon plunge the family into its most violent and self-destructive conflict. The sudden death of John Scalish in 1976 left the Cleveland Mafia, well, kind of adrift. The old guard of the family quickly moved to appoint James Jack White Licavoli, a respected veteran from the old Detroit Purple Gang, as the new boss. Licavoli was an old-school mafioso, but his leadership was immediately and violently challenged from an unexpected quarter. The challenger wasn't another Italian mobster vying for the throne, but a fiercely independent and, honestly, fearless Irish-American gangster named Danny Green. Green was a former Union leader with his own powerful crew of Celtic loyalists, and he had no respect for the traditional mafia hierarchy. He saw the leadership vacuum as his opportunity to seize control of Cleveland's lucrative rackets. Green wasn't alone in his ambition either. He formed a powerful and dangerous alliance with John Nardi, a highly respected mafia soldier who felt he'd been passed over for a leadership position after Scalish's death. Nardi was a disgruntled insider who brought with him knowledge of the family's operations and a faction of loyal followers. Together, Green and Nardi declared war on the newly established Licavoli regime. What followed was, frankly, one of the most explosive and public gang wars in American history. The weapon of choice was the car bomb, a brutally effective and terrifyingly indiscriminate tool of assassination that earned Cleveland the grim nickname Bomb City, USA. The war turned the streets of Cleveland into a battlefield. Between 1976 and 1977, nearly 40 bombs were detonated across the city as the two factions targeted each other with relentless ferocity. The explosions became a grim, almost daily feature of life in the city, terrifying citizens and overwhelming law enforcement. The war claimed high-profile casualties on both sides. In August 1976, Licavoli's underboss, Leo Lips McCary, disappeared and was presumed murdered. In May 1977, John Nardi was killed instantly when a bomb planted in a car next to his exploded in the parking lot of the Teamsters Hall he controlled, a clear message from the Licavoli faction. Despite the mounting body count, Danny Green seemed, well, almost invincible. He survived multiple assassination attempts, including one where a bomb demolished his apartment building while he was inside. His apparent luck only added to his mythic reputation. Desperate to eliminate this Irish thorn in their side, Licavoli's crew finally decided to hire outside help. They contracted Ray Ferrito, a hitman from out of state, to carry out the murder. On October 6, 1977, as Green left a dentist's appointment, Ferrito and his partner detonated a bomb hidden in a car parked next to Green's. The Irishman's luck had finally run out, but his death, far from saving the Cleveland family, would prove to be the catalyst for its ultimate downfall. The murder of Danny Green was a short-lived victory for Jack Licavoli and the Cleveland crime family. You know, the public and brutal nature of the gang war had brought intense scrutiny from local and federal law enforcement, who were determined to dismantle the organization responsible for turning their city into a war zone. The key to their case came from an unlikely source: the man who had killed Green. Hitman Ray Ferrito learned through the grapevine that the Cleveland family, fearing he could link them to the murder, had marked him for death. So, faced with the choice of being killed by the mob or going to prison for life, Ferrito chose a third option. He became a government witness. Ferrito's testimony was the bombshell that law enforcement had been waiting for. He provided a detailed insider's account of the war, naming names and exposing the entire conspiracy to murder Danny Green. His cooperation gave prosecutors the evidence they needed to wield a powerful new legal weapon, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations, or RICO Act. Passed in 1970, the RICO Act allowed prosecutors to target entire criminal enterprises, not just individual criminals for specific crimes. They could now charge mob leaders like Licavoli for ordering crimes, even if they never got their own hands dirty. The Green murder trial was one of the first major tests of the RICO Act against the Mafia. The resulting trials were a disaster for the Cleveland family. Based largely on Ferrito's testimony, Jack Licavoli and his entire administration, including his underboss Angelo Big Ange Leonardo, the son of Big Joe, were convicted and sent to prison for their roles in the war. The convictions decapitated the family's leadership and sent a shockwave through the national Mafia network. The once mighty Cleveland family was left in shambles, its power structure shattered. But honestly, the worst was yet to come. The government had found a crack in the Mafia's sacred code of silence, and they were about to break it wide open. In 1984, facing a life sentence from his own RICO conviction, acting boss Angelo Leonardo made an unprecedented decision. He followed Ferrito's lead and became a government witness. This was a catastrophic blow not just to Cleveland, but to La Cosa Nostra across the country. Leonardo was the highest-ranking mafioso in American history to become an informant. His testimony provided the government with a roadmap to the inner workings of the National Mafia Commission, leading to the convictions of the heads of all 5 families in New York in the famous Commission trial. The betrayal by one of their own, a boss and the son of a founding boss, signaled the beginning of the end for the Old World Mafia. While Cleveland was grabbing headlines with its explosive gang wars, a quieter but equally insidious form of organized crime was operating in Ohio's capital. The Columbus crime family was a much smaller organization, often referred to as a satellite crew or faction that answered to more powerful syndicates, primarily the Cleveland family and, at times, the Gambino family of New York. For years, one of Cleveland's key soldiers, Benjamin Benny Zappola, ran the Columbus faction, overseeing local gambling and loan sharking rackets until his murder in 1972. The Columbus Crew's true significance, however, lay in its connection to the vast river of cash flowing out of Las Vegas. This connection came to light through a seemingly ordinary suburban development in the Columbus suburb of Gahanna. In the 1970s, a company called Saratoga Development Corporation bought a large tract of land to build a housing project called Saratoga Estates. The streets were given charming names after Kentucky Derby winners, like Riva Ridge Boulevard. But behind this wholesome facade was a dirty secret. The company was co-owned by Alan Glick, a man later exposed as a frontman for mob interests in Las Vegas. The development was financed with millions of dollars in loans from the mob-controlled Teamsters Central States Pension Fund, the same fund Cleveland's mob had its hooks in. The Saratoga Development Company was, in essence, a front used to launder money and facilitate a massive skimming operation overseen by the notorious Frank Lefty Rosenthal, the mob's man in Vegas, who was later immortalized in the film Casino. The company ultimately went bankrupt in 1975, but its collapse exposed the deep ties between the quiet Columbus suburb and the glittering, corrupt world of Las Vegas casinos. The story took an even darker turn when an investor named Tamara Rand, who was suing to get access to the company's financial records, was murdered in a classic gangland-style hit in her San Diego home, silenced before she could expose the full extent of the mob's involvement. The fallout from the Saratoga Estates affair was immense. Alan Glick, fearing for his life, eventually became a key government witness. His testimony was instrumental in convicting top bosses from the Chicago outfit and the Kansas City crime family for their role in controlling the Las Vegas skim. The case revealed how a seemingly minor operation in Columbus was part of a complex nationwide conspiracy to defraud the government and the Teamsters Union of hundreds of millions of dollars. It showed that even in the heartland, far from the traditional centers of mafia power, the mob's influence was pervasive, corrupting both legitimate business and the very landscape of the community. The convictions of the 1980s, fueled by high-level informants like Angelo Leonardo, were a death blow to the traditional mafia in Ohio. By 1990, federal authorities considered the Cleveland crime family to be virtually defunct. Its made members were either dead, serving long prison sentences, or had become government witnesses themselves. The organization that once held a seat on the National Commission and controlled a vast empire was reduced to a handful of aging wise guys. An attempt was made to rebuild in the 1990s under a new boss, Joseph Joe Luce Iacobacci, who even inducted a few new members, but it was a shadow of its former self. Today, what remains of the Cleveland Mafia is described as a small, almost benign group of old-timers. The current boss is believed to be Russell R.J. Pappalardo, who took over in the mid-2000s. The family's activities are now limited to low-level bookmaking and loan sharking, a far cry from the days of controlling Las Vegas casinos and Teamsters pension funds. The formal structure has all but disappeared, and its influence on the city is negligible. The same is true for Columbus, where any remnant of the old Gambino Licavoli crew has long since faded. The occasional sighting of an out-of-state mob associate meeting with local bookies is now the only hint of the city's past connections. However, the decline of the Italian-American mafia did not mean the end of organized crime in Ohio. Nature abhors a vacuum, and the criminal underworld is no exception. New, more violent, and less structured gangs have emerged to fill the void, focused primarily on the highly profitable and brutal drug trade. Groups like the Third World Mob in Columbus, a gang with no connection to the old mafia, have become the new face of organized crime. In 2024, members of this gang were convicted of trafficking massive amounts of cocaine, demonstrating a level of criminal activity that the aging remnants of La Cosa Nostra could no longer manage. These new criminal organizations operate with a different set of rules. They lack the deep-rooted community ties, the complex hierarchy, and the code of silence, however flawed, that defined the Mafia. Their business is more direct and often more violent, centered on controlling drug territories rather than infiltrating legitimate businesses and unions. The era of the Mafia Dons, with their quiet authority and national influence, has passed. The echoes of La Cosa Nostra can still be heard in the stories and legends of cities like Cleveland and Columbus, but the real power in Ohio's underworld now belongs to a new generation of criminals. The iron grip of the Mafia on Ohio may have loosened, but its legacy is permanently etched into the state's history. The story of the Cleveland and Columbus crime families is more than just a true crime tale. It is a reflection of a uniquely American saga of immigration, ambition, and corruption. For decades, figures like Joe Leonardo, John Scalish, and Jack Licavoli were as much a part of Cleveland's identity as its steel mills and rock and roll. They were dark patriarchs who built an empire in the city's shadows. Their influence felt in the halls of Union headquarters, the back rooms of casinos, and the quiet suburbs where they lived. This legacy lives on in the culture and folklore of the region. The term Bomb City, USA is a permanent, if grim, part of Cleveland's vocabulary, a reminder of a time when mob violence was a terrifyingly public spectacle. The story of Danny Green, the defiant Irishman who took on the Italian mob, has been immortalized in books and films like Kill the Irishman, becoming a modern-day legend. Even seemingly mundane places hold a secret history. A suburban street named Riva Ridge Boulevard in Gahanna is a quiet monument to a massive mob-skimming operation that reached the highest levels of the criminal underworld. These stories have become part of the local identity, a source of dark fascination for generations. The fall of Ohio's Mafia also serves as a landmark in the history of American law enforcement. The war for Cleveland and the subsequent prosecutions were a turning point in the fight against organized crime. It was here that the RICO Act was honed into a devastating weapon, and where the Mafia's sacred code of omertà was irrevocably shattered by the highest-ranking informant in its history. The lessons learned in the fight against the Cleveland family were applied nationwide, contributing significantly to the decline of La Cosa Nostra across the country. Ohio, in this sense, was a critical battleground in a war that redefined the balance of power between the government and the mob. Today, as new criminal organizations vie for control of drug territories, the old Mafia seems like a relic of a bygone era. Its power has faded, its ranks have thinned, and its methods have been replaced by a more chaotic and often more brutal form of street crime. Yet, the shadow of the families remains. It serves as a cautionary tale about the corrupting influence of unchecked power and a testament to a time when a few ambitious men from cities like Cleveland and Columbus could build a criminal empire that challenged the authority of the state itself. Their story is a crucial, dark chapter in the history of Ohio and in the broader narrative of America's long and complicated relationship with organized crime.